You're listening to In Kap We Trust for the Always Next Year Podcast Studio Network. You can find the team on our Twitter at ANY Podcast or on our website, www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. And now, to bring us in, the Jackdaws.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with a win. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still happy life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Hello and welcome to another episode of In Kap We Trust. For the remainder of today, anyway, for the Always Next Year podcast, I am your host, Shane, and I am joined by Frank Klose of 97.3 ESPN Radio. Frank, sir, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Shane?
I am good. We had a little bit of a delay getting this show going tonight. We also, I feel like we had this scheduled earlier in the week and we didn't work out. So we actually have a lot to talk about, and I can't say excited. I'm actually very frustrated about the process. But today, the Philadelphia Phillies have relieved Gabe Kapler of his managerial duties after 2 seasons, completing 2 games under 500 in those 2 seasons. Obviously, here at AMYP, we're big Cap supporters. We liked the hire when it happened. We were not quite as hard on him as a lot of the Philadelphia Phillies fan base was. Why don't we start off with your perceptions of Gabe Kapler and his tenure here for those 2 years?
Well, I think it's important to remember he was kind of learning on the job for a lot of this. And, you know, I think at times, especially early, he made some mistakes that he didn't make again. You know, if you remember back to the beginning of last season, including opening day, when he pulled Aaron Nola a little early, that sort of became the mantra of fans, that he pulls guys too early. I don't think that was really the issue anymore. So it seems like he found ways to best deal with his ace. You know, I think that what rubbed people the wrong way was really his pleasant demeanor. You know, I almost think Phillies fans expected him to want to start throwing chairs and screaming out loud. And, you know, he did make the comment at one point, well, you know, I'm not Dallas Green. I mean, which I think is fair to say. I mean, the manager of today's game, you know, needs to be positive. You're trying to manage the personalities even more than you seem to be managing the game on the field. And so, you know, I think what it comes down to in the end is if the players really had his back, and if your major goal is to manage the personalities, and there was a big disconnect, you know, I think the one thing that was pretty damning that came out in the last few weeks was that piece from Matt Gelb of The Athletic, which kind of took you into how the pitching coach situation unfolded. Yes. And it seemed like Kapler had a very big hand in deciding to promote Chris Young rather than lose him to the Atlanta Braves. And ultimately, of course, as the story goes, the Atlanta Braves take Rick Kranitz from the Phillies. And I think that left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. And I think that might have been perhaps what the clubhouse thought. And you know, I think I want to add to this too is that, you know, the thing that really bothered me the most about the Phillies the last couple, really this past season, is the season you're supposed to win. You put that season in the hands of 3/5 of a starting rotation that was clearly not good enough the year before. You know, had you added another starter that was of impact prior to the season, I think the story is very, very different. You know, Vince Velasquez averaged 4.65 innings a game like he had done every other time he was with the Phillies. Nick Pivetta, if you look at his ERA this year, it was, if you compare it to his lifetime ERA, it's 0.04 higher. So in other words, Nick Pivetta was what he's always been. And so, you know, that's a lot of games that especially when the flawed construction of the bullpen left you with a lot of old guys that were injured. You know, the Phillies were in a really tough spot. And, you know, the middle of the season, it felt like Gabe Kapler had absolutely nobody to turn to when he has to pull Vince Velasquez sometimes in the 3rd inning. And then he was really in a thankless situation because you open up the bullpen door, your choices are. And by the way, I think he's very talented, but Edgar Garcia rushed to the major leagues. J.D. Hammer rushed to the major leagues. Austin Davis can't get it out in the major leagues. Then behind that was Yaxel Rios, ended up released and ended up on the Pirates. So you see there's these, he had for a while this bullpen that it's just you didn't know who was going to come out of it next, and his starters weren't going deep. And so what's he to do? So I mean, I think in some ways he gets a little bit of credit for making this a 500 team this year. With the negative run differential, which is not something that happens a lot. So, so I think unfortunately for Gabe, I think that just the tipping point is really just that Chris Young thing. Because once you feel like your manager is not for you but against you, I think that's really hard to reclaim. So, despite what perhaps Matt Klentak wanted. The John Middleton made his decision, and I think there's the potential for Gabe Kapler to learn from this experience and have success somewhere else. But his his time in Philadelphia is done, and he's and in that 2-year window he had a losing record.
2 games under 500, as you mentioned earlier. You mentioned something interesting here. Obviously, the 10, 11-day deliberation process that they went to where Gabe Kapler, and I feel for him on a human side here, to come to work each of those 10 days and continue to do what he is going to be doing and evaluating this previous season and making plans for next season, knowing that his his career is in limbo. How difficult that process must have been for Gabe, and I feel for him. And John Middleton, again, we had the players were here for like 2 weeks ago. How does this man have to fly across the country and construct different types of meetings out of the city of Philadelphia to take these full 10 days? How do you not enter in September with a plan? It seems right now that John Middleton, Matt Klentak, the two of them are not on the same page. You could throw Andy McPhail in that as well. There seems to be so much dysfunction between the three of those minds that Kapler, to me, seems as though he's the scapegoat. And we've seen that word thrown around a lot so far on Twitter in different articles that have been posted just today, obviously, since the news has broke. What do you kind of take of the fact that John Middleton took this decision out of Matt Klentak's hands and then went on record to state, so long as Matt Klentak is making the next, or that basically Klentak is going to be making the next managerial hire and he has full support and trust in him? Very politically correct thing. You need to say that as his or as John Middleton and in his role.
Yeah, I think that if if John Middleton was that involved at this point of the process, he clearly has something in mind he expects for the next manager. And while Matt Klentak may lead the process, I'm sure he's part of it. I am sure he's been told already, all right, you're going to find an experienced major league manager. Now is not the time to have another guy learn the ropes. So I don't think we're going to be seeing. I know couple people are saying, "Well, promote Dusty Wathan." No, I don't. That's a hard no. This is not the time for Dusty Wathan to take the reins of the Phillies. What could happen is he could, learn under somebody who's got a lot of experience who will pass it to him someday. But I think they want the experienced manager. They'll be shopping in the category that includes Buck Showalter, Dusty Baker. Joe Girardi, perhaps. I think Joe Maddon's heading to the Los Angeles Angels. I think that was settled the day that Brad Ausmus got fired by the Angels. But I think they're going to be shopping in that category of the experienced major league manager. I don't think they're going to spend a lot of time trying to find the next Gabe Kapler, which AKA the next up and coming analytically driven guy out there. When I look at those types of potential managers, I mean, I think Mark Loretta is going to be a heck of a manager someday. He might end up with the Cubs job. I don't know. But I think they definitely want somebody with a track record in this case. And one thing about the Phillies, and I think John Middleton has to realize this, is the Phillies have always kind of hired their managers on the cheap. They've never really spent for a manager. And I heard somebody today say Gabe Kapler was only due to make $800,000 this year. I mean, that's unbelievable that a major league manager would be making such little money. Like it better be at least $1 million, even. But if you're shopping in the type of aisle in the store that I'm talking about here, I think Middleton's got to pony up the money. So I think he's probably going to set some expectations. He's going to write the check in the end, and of course it's his team and his money. He can do what he wants with it. I think he's going to make those expectations clear, but he's not going to be the type that's going to interfere in terms of interviewing, in terms of calling potential candidates to gauge interest. But I think his fingerprints will be all over the next one because he already made the statement that the choice of the front office isn't his.
Do you trust John Middleton throughout this process to lay the correct plan down? And then do you think that he at all has any trust? I mean, he obviously does, considering Matt Klentak's status as of right now. But would you have any trust in the two of them to make a decision that leaps a franchise that has otherwise been so poorly run for the last several decades at this point?
Well, I think this is I think if you don't really trust them to decide who your manager is to begin with, that includes Kapler. I don't understand totally why they're there. I think this could be a situation where they're both signed to big money contracts for a couple years more, and Matt Klentak, his 3-year extension doesn't kick in until this offseason, so he's got 3 more years, and I don't know that John Middleton wants to throw those 3 years away. So I think he's kind of upping his level of expectation. I don't think he. See, this is a really tough one because usually you let the baseball people do the baseball things, and if they're not the right people making the decisions, you go another direction. But I think he's trying to, at this point, claim some of his investment and exert his influence at the same time. And so with this year being sort of a waste, the year that Bryce Harper, he wrote the check to Bryce Harper, the year he wrote the check to Andrew McCutchen, the expectations were high. They sat through a rebuild that was on the heels of one of the longest trying to drag out winning, whatever you want to call it, for the recent memory. After 2012, 2013, 2014, and only 2015 do you decide to rebuild. Well, you should be able to be a little bit better than this in that 4-year window, in my opinion. So he put up the money, and these guys that are in the front office, they may still be getting a shot to stay around, but I think the target's on their back big time. And this time next year, we could be seeing other moves made if the manager doesn't get the pieces he needs to win. Like this Phillies team has to win. John Middleton is not going to accept anything less. So I think heads will roll from the front office if that doesn't happen next year. But for now, I think he clearly has expressed doubts in their ability to make the baseball decisions. So they're on the clock. I think that's all I can really say to that.
So you had mentioned something in your previous response about potential managers that could be coming through. And something that's very interesting to me, and it is very much so the commonly reported desire at this point to find not necessarily an old school type of manager, but a pro's pro, someone who has been here and can handle this type of environment. And the Philadelphia Phillies are notoriously, at least again over the last few decades, behind the curve in terms of the analytical movement and whatever new trends are coming. Like everyone should want to find the next new young, innovative thinking and smart, analytically driven young manager. And we're talking about now the possibility of bringing in a Girardi, bringing in a Showalter. And you would also mention something interesting that sure, maybe for 2-3 years, they come in here and kind of add some stability to an area that we haven't had any. And maybe they're grooming Dusty Wathan. I don't particularly think that would be the correct move. But if you had your druthers at this point, are you looking to get one of these Girardi types, Buck Showalter types, or are you looking to find the next young and innovative mind?
I don't think so, and I think that the reason is that the Phillies need somebody that's going to have credibility with the players from day one. If you look at somebody like Joe Girardi, he's got a World Series ring, right? So the one day that he walks into to the clubhouse for the very first time, they know that he's a World Series champion, and he's there to make them a World Series champion as well. Now, think I'm trying to remember now if trying to remember the track records of others. I remember some of them in the World Series, but Buck Showalter, of course, he's had a lot of success in the major leagues, and with someone like that, that's the same idea. And he's the name that's going to come up a lot because Sandy McPhail and Matt Klentak both work with him in Baltimore, and I think that it's also if you're going to go with that kind of linking, then Dusty Baker worked for McPhail at the Cubs, and certainly Joe Girardi played for the Cubs, I believe, around that time as well. So you have these links, but I just think that they want the new manager to walk into that clubhouse and the players to basically automatically buy in. So that's right. I remember. That's right. Showalter was left the Diamondbacks the year before they won the World Series. That's yes. What that was. So, but Showalter, he's got that cachet. Dusty Baker has that cachet, and by the way, one reason to think Dusty Baker might be good is that he's already managed Bryce Harper, and Bryce Harper loves him. So when your star is going to be behind the new manager too, that's extra cachet. So I think that's what it's all about. And I don't think that the next up and coming manager is going to have that. So while Mark Loretta, in my opinion, might be one of the best possible choices out there for a manager, I don't think he's going to be the type that's going to be hired by the Phillies this time around. This time it needs to be experience. They better have some rings on their finger, or at least like Showalter have his Manager of the Year awards and stuff like that. It's got to be someone that they say, all right, we're clearly ready to win now.
So coming with that experience, coming with those championships and rings on their fingers, a guy like Girardi, one thing that's interesting to me is his bench coach from New York is obviously here in Philadelphia now. He would be walking into a situation with a guy who understands him very well. Now I don't recall for certain when his interviews or conversations with the other clubs that are interested in Girardi have occurred or will occur. But do you take any stock into, and I actually can't recall who reported it now, and I can't read my handwriting, so we're going to pass over that small point. But do you take any stock in the fact that this 10-day deliberation process, maybe Girardi's been the guy, and John Milton and the Phillies were waiting for that assurance of, I do think this is the right opportunity for me. I want to manage Bryce Harper and JT Realmuto, in their primes. I want year 2 of this contract of Aaron Nola. I want Philadelphia, and I want my guy with me who's already there. Do you take any stock in the fact that maybe he's a kind of a quiet candidate right now? It's weird to say that Girardi would be a quiet candidate, but obviously the noise that Showalter is making right now is legitimate with the obvious ties.
Well, I think Girardi, in my opinion, he would be my fit for this role, and I think that the Phillies have to consider him. I did hear Jim Salisbury of NBC Sports Philadelphia mention him as a possibility in his podcast today. So it's not like he's been off the radar. Now, Joe Girardi did interview with the Cubs for the manager job yesterday. It was a full 8-day interview. He's set to interview with the New York Mets next. Mm-hmm. And while he's on I-95, maybe he could shoot down a couple hours and an interview here as well. Now, that'll be really interesting to see. Tomorrow, the Phillies are going to have, I guess, depending when you're listening to this, of course, but Friday at 3 o'clock, we're going to have a press conference, and it'd be interesting to see if they name some names that they plan to interview, or if they're going to do it kind of hush hush. We've seen all kinds of things when you're from the Phillies for looking for the next manager. If you remember the one year when Charlie Manuel was hired, they paraded everybody in and everybody met with the media, and there's this long public drawn out process, and then they hired Charlie Manuel, which everybody thought they were going to hire to begin with. But since then, really, there hasn't really been this type of manager search. when Kapler was hired, it was in a lot of ways it wasn't very flashy the way they went about it. So it'd be interesting to see if they're going to mention anybody that they're going to interview. But I think that Girardi makes a lot of sense, and in terms of retaining Rob Thompson, one thing that I understand is that the coaches will not be kept from pursuing other opportunities that they might want to follow, even though they've locked him in. So my question is, if Girardi does take the job in Chicago or does take the job in New York, is Rob Thompson going to
stay
go with him? Yeah, I mean, I think that's a real possibility. So I don't think they're going to stand in the way of anybody on the staff, changing roles or changing jobs. And at the same time too, we saw last year they were willing to eat the money of Kranitz's contract because they wanted to make another move. So I would not be shocked either if somebody on this staff isn't retained after the manager is chosen. And usually you want the bench coach to be your guy, but Thompson's very, very well respected. I don't think asking one of the veteran managers to say, "Can you deal with Rob Thompson here?" I don't think that's going to be a barrier by any means, because he is very respected. He's been known for being good at getting data and communicating that to the players. But Thompson could help entice Girardi. So if the Phillies do interview Girardi, if they have sincere interest in checking out Girardi, they'll have a great cheerleader in their corner already who can say, "Yeah, Joe, why don't you come here?" So this will be very interesting to see. I do think that they will consider all of those cachet types.
So coming along with the managerial search, you mentioned obviously Thompson being a quote unquote kind of cheerleader to sit here and further entice Girardi to the job of manager of the Philadelphia Phillies. We're entering for the Phillies, who are not great with scouting, do not have a deep farm system. We're not churning out Sotos and Acuna Jr. This is not the Phillies. We have to open up our checkbooks. For major free agents, for just average role-playing free agents, we have so many holes to fill this year, and there is so much dysfunction in our house who are making those decisions. If you had to trust any one player or few players to sell Philadelphia despite the dysfunction right now, who are you trusting to talk to Rendon? Who are you trusting to talk to Garrett Cole? Or even, I mean, you don't really have to entice Cole Hamels to come back. He knows the city, he knows the market. But if you had like a leadership group of players right now that could kind of be those cheerleaders for your city, for your market, who are you using right now in those meetings?
Oh, well, definitely Kapler. Kapler, excuse me. I clearly have had him on my mind too much. I mean, clearly Harper. I got the PER right. But yeah, I think Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, that they can be very enticing. They're widely respected by their peers in the game, and so I don't think that. I don't think that they'll have a hard time convincing somebody if it's just a matter of one place or the other. But what we're going to see, though, is a lot of these free agents that are out there. I think they need the impact of a Garrett Cole, no matter what he costs, and they can't worry about year 6 this time around, or perhaps Steven Strasburg, who may opt out of his contract, which is
should. You see the way he's pitching.
Yeah, he really, really should. I think that would be a wise decision. And Anthony Rendon, so, the Nationals probably can't keep both of them, so it'd be very, very interesting to watch this offseason for the Nationals. But yeah, I think it's going to be a matter of who writes the biggest check with these types of players. They're Scott Boras clients. You see Scott Boras represents Garrett Cole. Scott Boras represents Anthony Rendon. I think the relationship will be fine. He's had a good relationship with John Middleton, the agent Boras, and Rendon and Harper were teammates for so long. I think there's a real opportunity there for them to sign one of them if they're willing to write the check. And I think that at the end of the day, that's what's going to come down to. One question I would have too is, like this year, is it going to drag on and drag on and drag on? And should I be booking my spring training trip later in the later in the season? I got lucky last year, and I happened to be able to get to that Jake Arrieta press conference. But this year I missed the Harper one because I was already done for the spring. So this could be a similar type of thing where they could They could land one if they're willing to write the check. I would rather just see it be Garrett Cole, just because you need that rotation stability. And this past year when Aaron Nola had it all put on his shoulders and they started bumping him up to pitch every literal fifth day instead of every fifth start, he kind of showed some cracks along the way, and maybe it was just the pressure put on him. But I think maybe if he had another guy with him in the rotation, like Garrett Cole, that is, he would feel a lot better. And by the way, if you sign Garrett Cole, you can't stop there. I think you try to get somebody like Hamels, who could be a veteran presence, isn't recognizing he's not who he was, but be a veteran presence, and maybe could help your club from the left side, because you're gonna need a lefty.
Absolutely, and you hit it on the head earlier, and kind of reiterating it there. They went into this 2019 season with Aaron Nola and 4 legitimate question marks. Obviously, what Jake Arrieta was, but we see the way that he was trending. Beyond that, you were hoping a prayer that Vince Velasquez can hold down a 5th spot. Zach Eflin can take that next step, which Zach Eflin seemed like a pitcher who was probably hurt worse by the Chris Young decision over the Kranitz decision. There was numerous reports of him having his better and more quality starts when abandoning that game plan, which is a lot to say, obviously, about both Kapler and Chris Young. And then obviously Nick Pivetta, who was, in my mind, the single most disappointing thing about this season, outside of the obvious season as a whole. If you're going to put one player in that, you can't go into something like that. Right now, first of all, Garrett Cole is the option to me as well. Not to say that I would ever kick Anthony Rendon out of bed. I certainly would not. He's one of the, look, you saw it in the elimination game last night, which was unreal, by the way. The Dodgers are just, side tangent on that real quick. How can you win 94 games, 96 games, 104 games, 94 games, 106 games, and not win a World Series in that 6-year stretch? That's insane to me.
Yeah,
Dave Roberts, bad managing last night, man.
Yeah, that was not one of Roberts' best moments, and the sad part is he's a really, really good manager and highly respected manager. But yeah, that was a mess. It just really goes to show you that and I think this actually is something that can make Phillies fans feel bad. Is if you had just done a little bit more and you do get that wild card. The Nats had to win a wild card game, and look where they are. So even it seems like the attitude that came from the organization was, well, we're not going to try to spend assets because we might lose in one game wild card. And well, guess what? Somebody's got to win that one game wild card. So, maybe you've had more help. You don't have to, you can save an Aaron Nola for that game, and maybe he comes up big. So I think that's the lesson learned here, because you could be the Nationals, I think, are more talented. Don't get me wrong, but when these series are only 5 games, you have a shot to win. If you got to that point, you have a shot to win a 5-game series.
Absolutely. Baseball playoffs, baseball's postseason right now this is the best playoffs in sports, and we see it for the reasons that you just said. You have a winner-go-home wild card game on each side, and then a 5-game series before you hit the 7-game series, and literally anything can happen. When you're rolling out there, and I think it's fascinating the way pitchers are used today. When you sit there and you see Strasburg start a game, Corbin come in, despite being lit up 2 games before, excuse me, the trust that the Nationals would have in their starting rotation. The Dodgers very incorrectly want to continue to try to make Clayton Kershaw something that he proves time and time again that he is not. That frustrates the hell out of me. I feel like Kershaw was put in a pretty terrible position last night. But this is certainly a Phillies podcast. So we're going to shift it back over now, because I could talk about postseason baseball all night. So the Phillies have obviously a ton of holes. We have to figure out what to do at third base. Are they going to go after a Donaldson or a Moustakas this year? Are they going to look to flip the only assets that we do have in a Chris Bryant trade that has been kind of dangled, which I don't believe for the life of me would ever occur? but it's something people are talking about. Obviously, the Rendon possibility. What are they going to do with Gene Segura? Did they, trade the quote-unquote shortstop of the future for a guy who played a miserable defensive shortstop this year, and he very, very well may be a second baseman next year? And what does that do for Kingery? Is he now a shortstop? And they have an entire bench to worry about, 4 starters, an entire bullpen. Last year in this offseason, we were linked to absolutely every single free agent and every trade possibility out there. This year's going to be no different. We have more holes to fill, arguably more holes to fill this year than last. How confident are you in one? Last year we saw, and you already mentioned, the snail's pace that this offseason moved for us. And I feel like that, to take that long to get your guy in Harper, it made the rest of that offseason incomplete. If you didn't get Harper, what are you going to do? You do get Harper that late, well, you can't do anything. How much do you think that the pace that this front office is going to attack the free agent market and the trade market is going to impact this season?
Well, I think it's going to drag out no matter who it is, because that's a Scott Boras winter, no matter what. Honestly, I don't think we talk about an impact pitcher. I mean, the impact pitchers that could be on the free agent market are Steven Strasburg and Garrett Cole, period. That's it. The next level down is Zach Wheeler, who is a very, very good pitcher. Somebody's going to pay him more than he's worth, just because he'll be the best one out there that will sign quickest, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But in terms of trading, I've heard, like you said, we're hearing a little bit of everything. You expect the Phillies to be linked to everybody. The people that I've heard some people say, well, trade Rhys Hoskins for a pitcher.
Well, you can't trade Rhys Hoskins after the worst slump of his professional career. It makes no sense.
There's that, and then I don't know that there's going to be any type of impact starter available in trade anyway. So, I mean, if you're trying to add somebody like that, they need to be somebody who's ready for a real teardown, like the Phillies were when they traded Cole Hamels, or like the Blue Jays were when they traded Roy Halladay. I mean, that just doesn't come along that often, right? So I don't know that there's going to be a good enough pitcher out there that's going to be traded. So I think they just have to gear up and try to go for Garrett Cole, and they had better get him. I mean, they're boxed into a corner where for them being way too careful to trade not even their second tier prospects this year at the trade deadline. See, that's one thing that bothers me about the trade deadline, because they could have very well used some of their second tier prospects to get the Marcus Stroman types, and then they would have one less hole in the starting rotation this year. They don't seem to think that way, that if you can acquire an asset at the trade deadline with more control, you still have them. And the Mets, I don't think the Mets gave up a lot for Stroman, and he could have been with them going into next year, and then maybe you're only talking about one rotation spot. So I think because they haven't made these types of moves, they're going to be boxed in. They're going to have to sign Garrett Cole and probably another free agent type, probably a Cole Hamels, just because they just they don't have many assets. And to your point about the infield, I personally really hope they don't start messing around with Gene Segura. I think because you need your assets to go towards those players I just mentioned. You got to quickly non-tender Cesar Hernandez and Michael Franco, which means Scott Kingery is one of your starters, and then you're going to need a veteran type to sort of hold the fort till Alec Boehm comes up. Like I don't think they have big money to spend on an infield bat, because they have to get the pitching first. So I think in some respects they're going to roll the dice a little bit. They, of course, Howie Kendrick's getting a lot of attention. He was getting a lot of attention
before the Grand Slam.
Before the Grand Slam for having a poor offseason, then he had the Grand Slam. But he's kind of the type of player that they're going to have to get just to plug into a temporary position, a veteran guy that's not going to command much money anymore because he can't play the defense he used to. But the likes of him, or I think of Neil Walker, who was with the Marlins this year, like somebody that can start for now, can turn over one of those infield positions to Boehm later, and would be a versatile bench piece after that. So I think Neil Walker is perfect for that because he's a switch hitter. But if you approach the infield that way, then you can just worry about spending your money on pitching. Like I think that's what they're going to have to do. and not give up any prospects other than the draft pick it's going to cost them to sign Garrett Cole.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most accurate approach that you could have right now as a Philadelphia Phillies fan or as a member of that front office. Before we go any further, quick reminder to everyone, this episode and all of our episodes are sponsored by Just Food. 215-794-FOOD, 215-794-3663. Treat yourself. Take it home. Go visit our guy over there, Asian Rob, at one of their 2 in-store locations. One is at Delville Market in Delaware Valley College. The other is in Bucks County. It is in Buckingham Green Shopping Center, if you guys are familiar with the area. Delicious food, wonderful people. They will cater your events. If you want to eat at home, like a slob that you are, I highly encourage you to do so. It is absolutely delicious. Again, that is Just Food. 215-794-FOOD, 215-794-3663. Treat yourself. Take it home. Frank, do you have any final thoughts before we close out this, I think, final episode of In Kap We Trust before I have to change the namesake?
Yeah, so get working on that name. Yeah, you're hopefully it'll come together in the next few weeks. But
pains me.
Yeah. Well, really, my closing thoughts are, I mean, the Phillies are at the point. I just reiterate what I just said. They're boxed in. They got to pony up money. That's really all they can do. They're gonna have to rely on the likes of Alec Boehm to come up at some point this year, and Spencer Howard's going to have to be their depth in the rotation down the line. I mean, I think that's what they're going to have to do. But the offseason shopping list, 2 starters. I don't even know what relievers to get out there. So I would otherwise I'd say get a reliever, but they're just going to have to spend money. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah, 100% agree. So, Frank, where can everyone find you on Twitter, and where can they find your streamed shows for 97.3 ESPN?
So you can follow me on Twitter at Frank Klose, that's Close with a K, and I'll be on 97.3 ESPN throughout the offseason talking the moves Phillies make. You can always stream it at 973ESPN.com, or you download the 97.3 app, and you can listen to Harry Mays and Eitan Shander. They have a show, as well as the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, where I'm frequently on. And also check out sportstalkphilly.com. My content will appear there as well.
All right, you can always find me, the host of In Kap We Trust, or whatever we're calling it next week. It's at Shane_Mead. You can follow the podcast here at ANY Podcast. Always be sure to check out any of our written work. Our podcast will also appear on the website as well. That is www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. If you ever want to get in contact with us, you can do so through the WhatsApp function, which is found on the contact tab of our website. Frank, it was also awesome, getting you on finally. I think we've been talking now back and forth for about a year and a half. So it's really cool getting you on. For all of our followers, please definitely give Frank a follow and check out some of his shows over there at 97.3. And what was the second one? You said Philadelphia Sports Talk?
SportsTalkPhilly.com.
SportsTalkPhilly.com. There you go. Frank, thanks again, sir. We're going to turn this over to the Jackdaws to carry us out.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.